Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My mom recently shared a story about my late Aunt Sarah, her lifelong friend and fellow software developer. So in her memory and in the spirit of the upcoming holidays, I present for you the tale of nepotism, computer science students, and Taylor Swift. Aunt Sarah was a senior developer at a small tech startup in Silicon Valley and a coding instructor at the local community college. She was also, unofficially, in charge of the office events. To help offset the costs, she had a small acrylic box on a table outside of her office with a slot in it so anyone could donate money to the event fund. Everyone knew about it and were happy to chip in. A month or so before the company's big end-of-year party, Aunt Sarah decided to check the box. Lo and behold, it was empty. Aunt Sarah knew something was fishy because she had seen several colleagues putting money in the box. This could only mean one thing: someone was stealing from the event fund. At this moment, Jake, the CEO's son and a fellow developer, came around the corner, and something about the way Jake was looking at her made Aunt Sarah suspicious. Jake didn't have a good reputation around the office, to say the least. He had a reputation for being pushy, obnoxious, rude, and just plain entitled. Unfortunately, he was not only the CEO's beloved son, but knew how to skirt the rules so he wouldn't get fired. "Hey Sarah, what's up?" Jake asked with a smirk. "Oh, just checking on the event fund," Aunt Sarah replied, eyeing him carefully. Aunt Sarah decided to set a trap to catch the thief. Using her coding skills, she set up a hidden security camera right by the box. She then had a colleague loudly brag about how he contributed $200 to the event fund. Then she waited. She got a notification that the camera was recording, and watched Jake open the empty box, scowl in disgust, and throw the box against the wall. "Damn it!" Jake muttered, kicking the fallen box. Now you'd think this would end with Aunt Sarah presenting the video evidence to her boss to get Jake fired, but oh no. As I mentioned in a previous post, if there's one thing software developers love, it's solving problems. And if it's computer science students, they'll make it an experience to remember. Aunt Sarah then went to her coding students. She offered them extra credit to come up with a rigged box that would make noise when opened. The more obnoxious the sound, the higher the bonus. "All right, class," she announced. "I've got a special project for you. Who's up for some real-world problem solving?" 1 week later, they delivered their project and demonstrated how it worked. Pleased with the results, Aunt Sarah awarded them the extra credit as promised. The next day, she set up the rigged box and proclaimed, "Well, isn't this nice? Someone donated $100 to the event fund." Then she went to her office and waited. The computer science students had rigged the box with one of those inserts from cards that play music when you open them. By popular vote, they had picked "Shake It Off" by Taylor Swift, right around the time the song was beginning to become overplayed. They also managed to ensure that once opened, the box couldn't close unless you pressed a hidden side button releasing the hinge, so the song would continue to play. For extra funsies, they made sure to angle the insert for maximum volume and secured it down with industrial-strength glue. Sure enough, everyone in the office heard Taylor Swift belting the repetitive chorus and Jake's frustrated grunts while trying to close the box. "Come on, shut up already!" Jake growled, fumbling with the box. One of those attracted by the sound was Jake's father. Finally, Jake chucked the box at the wall, managing to put a good-sized dent in it. "Jacob! What on earth are you doing?" his father demanded. The CEO then summoned Jake to his office. 15 minutes later, Jake left with a cardboard box and cleared out his desk, along with a note in his file: "Do not rehire, do not recommend." So his software development career was over. That December, Aunt Sarah had a little video prepared to show at the party. The security camera had caught Jake's attempt to steal from the box, all to the tune of "Shake It Off." "And that, folks," Aunt Sarah announced to the cheering crowd, "is how we shake off office thieves." The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be in a battle over my family's farmland, but life has a way of throwing curveballs at you. My name's John, and I inherited my grandparents' farm a few years back. It's been in our family for generations, 80 acres of good soil that's provided for us through thick and thin. I'll admit I was a bit overwhelmed when I first took it over. I had a day job in the city and wasn't sure how to manage a farm on top of that, but I knew it meant a lot to my family, so I was determined to figure it out. I'd drive out on weekends to check on things and do maintenance. The rest of the time, I leased most of the land to neighboring farmers to work. Things were going okay until Karen moved in next door. She bought the property adjoining mine and immediately started causing problems. Karen was one of those people who thought she knew better than everyone else and wasn't afraid to tell you so. She'd come over uninvited to give me advice on how to run my farm, despite having zero farming experience herself. "You really should convert this all to organic," she'd say. "And you need to put in solar panels. It's the 21st century." I tried to be polite at first, but it got old fast. Things came to a head when she decided to start an homeowner association for our rural area. Now, homeowner associations aren't common out here in farm country. We don't exactly have manicured lawns to fuss over. But Karen was determined to improve property values and modernize our community. She went around to all the neighbors, pressuring them to join her homeowner association. A few gave in just to shut her up. I flat out refused. My land had been just fine without an homeowner association for over 100 years, and I wasn't about to let some city transplant start dictating what I could do with it. Karen didn't take my refusal well. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my mailbox about my eyesore of a barn and how my tractors were lowering neighborhood aesthetics. I ignored them all. Then, one day, I drove out to check on the farm and got the shock of my life. There was construction equipment on my southeast field, the one furthest from my house. They were digging foundations for houses. I immediately called the police to report the trespassing and illegal construction. While I waited for them to arrive, I confronted the workers. "Who authorized this work?" I demanded. "This is private property." The foreman looked confused. "We have all the permits right here," he said, showing me a stack of paperwork. "Authorized by the Pleasant Valley Homeowner Association." My blood was boiling. I knew exactly who was behind this. When the police showed up, Karen came speeding down the road in her fancy SUV. She marched up like she owned the place. "What seems to be the problem, officer?" she asked sweetly. "The problem is you're building houses on my land without permission," I snapped. Karen waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. This land belongs to the homeowner association now. We voted on it at the last meeting." I stared at her in disbelief. "I'm not even a member of your homeowner association. You can't just vote to take my property," she sniffed. "Well, if you'd bother to attend the meetings, you'd know what was going on. This whole area is being rezoned for residential development. It's for the good of the community." The officer looked between us, clearly trying to sort out the situation. "Ma'am, do you have documentation showing you have rights to this land?" "Of course," Karen said confidently. She pulled out some official-looking papers. "Here's the rezoning approval and the deed transfer to the homeowner association." I took one look and knew they were forged. My signature was on there, but I'd certainly never signed anything like that. I told the officer as much. He frowned. "Ma'am, these documents appear suspicious. I'm going to have to ask you to cease all construction activities until we can verify their authenticity. In the meantime, you need to leave this property." Karen's face turned red. "This is outrageous. Don't you know who I am? I'm the president of this homeowner association." "Be that as it may," the officer said firmly. "You need to go. Now." She stormed off, but not before yelling that I'd be hearing from her lawyer. I was shaken, but grateful the officer had taken me seriously. Over the next few weeks, it all came out. Karen had indeed forged documents to make it look like my land had been rezoned and transferred to homeowner association ownership. She'd used homeowner association funds to start this little housing development, planning to sell the homes for a tidy profit. I got a lawyer and sued both Karen personally and the homeowner association. It was a long, stressful process. Karen tried every dirty trick in the book, claiming adverse possession, arguing prescriptive easements, even trying to say there was a clerical error and she'd actually owned my land all along. But in the end, the truth came out. The judge was furious when he saw the extent of Karen's fraud. Not only had she forged documents, but she'd been embezzling homeowner association funds for years. The ruling came down hard. Karen was found guilty of multiple felonies including fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison and ordered to pay massive restitution. The homeowner association was dissolved, with all assets seized to help pay back the defrauded homeowners. As for me, I was awarded a hefty sum for damages and legal fees. More importantly, my family's farm was safe. The judge even put in a court order barring any homeowner association from incorporating on or around my property in the future without my express written permission. It was a hard-fought battle, but seeing Karen led away in handcuffs made it all worthwhile. These days, things are peaceful again on the farm. I ended up quitting my city job to work the land full-time. Turns out I've got farming in my blood after all. Every now and then I'll run into one of the former homeowner association members in town. They're usually pretty sheepish, but grateful that Karen's reign of terror is over. I try not to hold grudges. After all, out here we have to be able to rely on our neighbors. But you can bet I keep a close eye on any new folks moving in, just in case there's another Karen lurking out there. They'll have to get up pretty early in the morning to pull one over on this farmer again. The next one is a petty revenge story. My two parents, one who is wheelchair-bound and the other who has advanced Parkinson's disease, live with me. Due to their mobility issues, I obtained a special permit, time-based, that allows me to park temporarily in most handicapped reserved parking lots when I'm transporting them. This has been a godsend since there is one of these lots just below my apartment, and the car park is very busy. The rules governing the usage of this permit and such lots are quite strict and most keep to them. However, you get the odd motorist who parks there without a permit from time to time. Even though they run a risk of having to pay a fine, it really depends on whether anyone reports it and then whether the parking attendants get there in time to issue the fine. Oftentimes they don't, and the drivers get away with it. So anyway, one day, I was bringing my parents to their usual appointments, Mum to dialysis, Dad to the elder care center. As we exited the lift, I spotted an MPV reversing, then driving forward to straighten out, before reversing all the way to the back of the handicap reserved lot, and then stopping. Not wanting to jump to conclusions, I walked to the front of the car where the permit would usually be displayed. This is mandatory. Nope, no permit. Only a couple of decals, one of which has the crest of our country's police force. And the driver, a middle-aged lady, is about to exit the car. Instead of immediately reporting the illegal parking like I always do, I figured it would be better to give her the chance to move the car since she was still there. So I firmly but politely informed her that she was parking in a handicap lot without a license, and could she please move her car as I would be using it presently. The lady went ballistic and started yelling, "Who said I was parking? I'm not parking! I was making a turnout. My car is big, so I have to make a bigger turn. Why do you say I'm parking?" Which is absolute bollocks. If you're doing a 3-point turn, you don't reverse all the way to the back of a parking lot just to make the turn out. I decided to ignore her and walk to my car, which was 3 lots down. To my irritation, instead of getting back in her car and moving, she followed me, haranguing me all the way about how she wasn't parking. All this while, her car firmly parked in the handicap lot. And then she yelled, "Why you show me the finger? You show me the finger for what?" Now, there's a lot of things I can handle, but to plainly slander me to gain sympathy, that's a bridge too far, lady. I did not flash my middle finger at you. Yes, you show me the finger. Why you show finger at me? I was seriously pissed off by now, but I was also on a time-sensitive schedule. I had to get my mum to the dialysis center by a cutoff time. By now, 3 minutes had passed since she started screeching at me. I ignored her, got into the car, made sure my permit reflected the correct time, and drove out towards the handicap lot and waited. The woman, realizing that I wasn't about to take her bait, got back into her car, started her engine, and drove off. After dropping my parents off, I decided that I wasn't going to take this one lying down. Unfortunately, I didn't have photographic evidence or video footage of her car actually parked in the lot, only pulling out of it. The only camera that would have caught it belongs to the housing board, HDB, who also manages the car park. However, my rear windshield camera did capture her license plate number, and there was that decal. So I sat down at my laptop, composed a firmly worded email, then checked it for accuracy, and sent it off. To the police commissioner. You see, with the police emblem so prominently pasted on the upper left-hand corner of her front windshield, either she was 1, an off-duty officer, in which case her conduct was unbecoming of a member of a government agency, 2, a relative of an officer, 3, illegally displaying a decal, this is an actual offense in my country, to give a misleading impression, or 4, a citizen who got the decal from a roadshow. While number 4 was the most likely, I figured I had nothing to lose, and really, if it was any of the first 3, then there ought to be some corrective action taken. That was the gist of the email. The next day I received a standard, "We received your feedback with thanks, and have sent it to the relevant unit email." Ah well, at least someone saw it. This morning I woke up to find another email, this time from a staffer who asked if he could give me a call later in the day to find out more about the incident. Surprised, but somewhat bemused, I replied, "Sure, I can take the call between 1 and 4 p.m. I wouldn't be driving then, so I wouldn't be likely to miss the call or take it illegally." The staffer suggested 3 p.m., and I confirmed it and gave him my contact number. At 3 p.m. sharp, the phone rang. It was the staffer. He made some quick queries, including if the woman had at any point identified herself as a member of the police. To be fair, she hadn't, and I said so. He then explained that they had gone through their system, and the car did not belong to anyone in the agency, and since the woman had not claimed to be a police officer, the likelihood was that the decal was picked up at a roadshow. I apologized for having troubled him for such a small matter, he replied cheerfully. No, ma'am, it's no trouble. We do have to investigate to make sure that there is no misuse. Oh, yes, we've also helped you report this to HDB already, so sorry that you had to go through this. So, at the end of the day, she ended up with a $200 fine for unauthorized parking in a handicapped reserved lot, I checked. And she won't be able to appeal because they will check the cameras and all it will show is that the car was stationary in the lot with her exiting for over 3 minutes. The most hilarious part of the whole thing was, all she had to do that day was hold her tongue for 10 seconds, get out of the lot, then scream at me and she would have gotten away with it. So gong shi fa kai, lady, I hope you enjoy the extra ang pao you're going to have to give to HDB, on top of the road tax you'll need to pay in about 5 days' time, which, given the size of your car, isn't exactly a small amount. Maybe next time you'll think twice about giving it that to a stranger when you're clearly in the wrong, especially when you don't know that the stranger has a history of knowing who to go to, and exactly how to do so in a way their complaint gets seen. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened a number of years ago. For background, I work on a car ferry, and am one of the crew members responsible for the loading of the vehicles. I don't do it alone, though, and it is a team sport. Before we load vehicles onto the car deck, we receive a loading list of booked traffic for the sailing. If someone is not booked, they can wait on standby to see if we can fit them on. With the deck loaded and the boat almost full, I said we could take a small MG if they didn't mind the squeeze. On came the green 1974 MGB, a very nice small car. After some gentle and slow guidance, it made it on with the smallest of margins. Cue the shouting from a man in his late 50s/early 60s. I'll call him Entitled Arse, EA. You there! I can't get out of my car! There was enough room to open the doors, but not all the way, admittedly. This was beside the point, though, because he was standing next to me a few cars away from his when he said it. What are you going to do about this? It's a disgrace! I had to ask him again to repeat his complaint and hope that he would realize how absurd his statement was. He said it again. I tried to stay composed and remembered that he might have had a bad drive or even a bad day up to this point. His wife was trying to tell him to be quiet and just to be grateful, but no, we were, myself and other crew members, doing our best to help them. As soon as he said to one of the sailors, "I've paid for my ticket, I demand a full space, you ducking morons," my mind was made up to help this gentleman. Cue malicious compliance. I said to him, "I'm very sorry for your inconvenience. You are of course right, sir. If you would like to get back into your car and just back up a little way, we'll be able to get you all the space you need." EA. About bloody time. Once he was ready, I got one of the sailors to start guiding him from the back of the car. Op. Keep it going, as his car backs up. Sailor guiding the car. Keep it going. He definitely knew what the plan was. The car was backed off of the boat and heading back for the car park. At this point, EA figured out what was going on and demanded to know what was happening. The sailor said that he would have all the room he needed waiting in the car park for the next boat. After EA lost the plot and came out with the usual threats of, "I know the managing director and I'll have you sacked," and we didn't look concerned. His wife snapped and went ballistic at him. Following a major dressing down in front of everyone, she made him apologize and ask politely if they could reboard. We said that because his wife was so awesome, that would be fine, but to listen to her advice in the future. The next one is an Entitled People story. Backstory. When I was 20 years old, I worked for an auto parts company. I was a cashier ringing customers up on a busy day. I'm usually laid back and very lenient when it comes to returns due to the customer is always right or some crap. A guy walks in with the battery, places a battery on my counter, and selects 1 quart of engine oil. The man comes back to the counter and tells me that he needs to return this battery for warranty due to it not holding a charge. Immediately, I recognize the brand of battery, which is a brand that we do not sell. In fact, our rival company sells it. I had explained this to the customer, but he was not having it. He said he knows he bought it here and was demanding a refund. I tell him again, I'm not gonna refund something that wasn't sold at this store. I then call the rival auto parts store, take down the man's information, and see if it was purchased at one of their locations. The store verified that indeed it was purchased at one of their locations and that it was still under warranty. I tell the customer this, and still he is not having it. He tells me I need to do my ducking job. I reply to him sternly, but still in a professional manner. I am doing my job. I am actually going above and beyond my job. So I could easily say you didn't have a warranty and just sell you another battery. I have no business call in my rival company for something like this. So I went out of my way to tend to your needs, and you're still telling me I need to do my job. If you can tell me how that makes sense, I will give you a battery. The customer had no answer and began to berate me verbally and cussing me out, saying he's going to come back with a gun and handle business. He also commented on my physique and said that steroids are affecting my brain, and that's the reason why I don't know how to do my job. I was in decent shape as a 20-year-old. Due to not having a social life, I would spend 8 hours at work, go home, and study. I also frequented a gym a lot. I would spend 8 hours at a local MMA gym just lifting weights, boxing, jiu-jitsu, and a couple other things. I enjoyed every minute of it and it kept me out of trouble. Going back to the incident, the man then made a comment as to I need to smile more often when talking to customers. At this point I was already irritated. I responded with, well, how about I just ducking tap dance for you, and then started tap dancing in front of him. I was about a foot away from him when this happened. The man proceeded to throw the quart of oil in my face, hitting me in the nose. I immediately reacted with the front kick to his chest. The kick pushed him back a bit, so he began to rush me. I dipped my right shoulder forward and brought my left elbow to his nose. It was like a modified spinning back elbow. I can feel that man's nose crack on my elbow. The customer fell down and began to cry with blood dripping from his nose. When this happened magically, my line of customers got shorter, and I saw a few had switched to another register. Lines. I helped the next customer with no issue. Then I thought to myself I should probably call the cops. I told my store manager about the incident, and he called the cops. My store manager was a friend of mine and trained with me at the gym. He pulled up the video and commented how my foot placement needs work. Police arrived and the man began buying me for assaulting him, but the customers vouched for me and the footage on the camera matched the customer's statements, so the guy was arrested for aggravated assault. The police officer that stayed behind to get the video evidence kept rewinding in the video and laughing. As the customer was leaving in handcuffs, he kept repeating that he was going to come back for me. The police officer asked my store manager if he wanted the guy trespassed. The store manager left it up to me, and I said, nah, let him come back. A little bit after I left that job, I joined the military, served for 10 years, and then became a cop in a small town. My soon-to-be wife was also at the store when the whole thing happened. She later revealed to me that that same guy had tried to get her phone number and then called her a wetback for saying no to him and said if he took her now, the cops wouldn't do anything because she was illegal. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.